welcome to the October 27th regular meeting of the Calaveras County Planning Commission, and we'll get started with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any staff announcements?
None at this time, Madam Chair.
And no agenda changes?
No changes to the agenda either.
Annette, do we have any members of the public online today? Well, we will, thank you. We will open and close the general public comment period as there is nobody in the audience and nobody online. And we have no items on the consent agenda today. I'm going for a record here. And our regular agenda item, the consideration of greenhouse gas reduction measures for Calaveras County. Gabriel, do you want to
Absolutely.
give a little summary of where we're at with this?
Yes.
Did you want to open the public hearing first, or?
Well,
It was-
not before he
okay.
normally, before we get the item read.
Okay.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. Item number one is consideration of the greenhouse gas reduction measures for Calaveras County. In compliance with Senate Bill 32 and consistent with the goals of the county's general plan regarding greenhouse gas reduction by 40% below 1990 levels by the year 2030, the Planning Commission will consider county-wide greenhouse gas reduction measures to determine the level of compliance with SB 32 and the general plan. The environmental impacts of the DHE reduction plan will be determined based on the county's level of compliance with the 40% target.
Commissioners, I suggest we just continue this to our special meeting proposed for next Thursday at 9 a.m. here, rather than have any discussion at this time. So Corey can be here, and if there are any members of the public who want to contribute. What are you guys thinking?
Before we make the motion for continuance, the package that we got didn't have in it, as far as I can find, what proposals the planning director made as a result of the survey. And it would be nice if what we get tomorrow or the next day or whenever, we'll have that.
Absolutely, Commissioner Laddish. The one main discrepancy between the Planning Commission's deliberations and what became the outcome of the survey was on the subject of agriculture. As you could see in the staff report brief staff report that I provided to you, there is a little table there that shows that on a scale of 1 through 5, all the questions for agriculture scored pretty high. Now, that could be a function of how that question was asked in the survey, so at the very bottom of the first page of the report, you see Ag 1, increased crop production fertilizer efficiency to reduce associated GHG emissions, had a score of 4.16 out of 5. Ag AG number 2 also had a score of 4.16. Number 3, reduced methane emissions from livestock enteric fermentation, score of 4.15. And the highest one, which is the wildfire said improve forest land health to reduce intensity of wildfire events and result in GHG emissions through collaborative forestry and economic opportunity, had a score of 4.78. So in light of those results, it seemed like even though we had only a sample of 72 respondents, 72 respondents is 7 times as many respondents that I've seen in our county in a very, very long time. So it's considered to be somewhat substantial, and it is not mandatory that the commission adopt any of the recommendations that came out of the survey, but it's just kind of a providing you with information, and also to what extent including or excluding the agriculture agriculture measures would affect our total percentage of compliance with our GHG reduction measures.
The question that I had is, you reported these results, I guess, to the consultants.
Yes.
Did you recommend that these be included in their final result?
Right. Yes, I did, because
On the basis of the
they asked whether or not, they said because the numbers were so high, over 4. What do you want to do with this? And I said, because it's a passing number, let's include it and see how it helps us in reaching our 40% goal.
Personally, I don't remember our saying, well, let's take agriculture out of the plan.
Okay.
Which
Yeah.
is reported that we did, but
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Okay.
I don't either. My understanding is we took out specific elements of it because they were not appropriate to the county, and there was really no way to implement reducing feedlots when we have no feedlot to reduce, or changing the way dairies are managed when, bless you, don't have a dairy. But we did ask that the consultants come back with measures more, if there were any measures that were more tailored to our actual conditions here in Calaveras County. Is that pretty much what you guys recall?
That's what I remember.
That's correct, and I think we were looking for input if it was available from the Ag Commissioner's office and from the University of California Extension people. If there were measures that could be included, we wanted to see them, and that's how it was left.
Yeah. I think that was our general overall commentary on many of the measures. There were a
Madam
few
Chair.
that we flat
Yeah.
out said no, but
Right.
a lot of them we were just looking for something more tailored.
Right. Madam Chair, I think the cumulative result of those comments meant that the agriculture component wasn't really applicable in many respects to the county. But it's a good thing that it is included in the analysis, and hopefully when we get the results of the report tomorrow, I've been told we would get the report tomorrow, then I'll be able to more intelligently tell you where we stand with regards to meeting our target of 40%, because that was the whole premise of this exercise. Now, as far as the consultants coming up with additional measures that may help with meeting our target, that has not happened at this particular time, and I'm not sure if they are able to bring additional measures to the table for us to consider. What I think the report would show tomorrow is that based on the measures that were originally provided for us on these sheets, which may not include most of your comments, those measures, by removing the ones that the Planning Commission felt were not either feasible or applicable, for example, REACH code requirements, those you're not going to find in the final analysis, because it was very clear when the building official came forward and talked about reach codes and so on and so forth. So those would definitely be something that you would find in the report that we did not choose to adopt as a measure. Now, I'm stating this because we may have to now go back when we see the report and examine those measures that we may have originally rejected. Now, not because we are compelled to do that, but because if our goal is to reach the 40% target, how do we get there? And if it is impossible to get there with these measures that are on the table, then I think we may have to, find out what else can we do. And if after doing all we can do, we still do not meet the target, then it becomes an issue that we have to discuss with our county councils, because we have a general plan 40% mandate and an adopted policy in our general plan, and our adoption of SB 32 as well. So
I would be very, very concerned about that. If they are not proposing additional measures and telling us what is possible in a rural setting, this is not the entire world of possible measures. And if what we're being told is we have to choose from these measures, I think there's a humongous problem with the scoping of this project.
Okay.
And I really told myself I was not going to get wound up about this today, but I have been working myself up to something for quite some time.
Right.
All of us have.
And one other thing you would notice. One other thing you would notice is that I know the commissioners went out of their ways to provide additional information individually, not only to staff, but also some that was forwarded to the consultants as well. The consensus is that if it's not a unanimous or majority decision of the commissioners to get these items forward, then it just becomes an individual, one particular commissioner's individual comments, and you may not find that most of those critical comments actually end up in their analysis. Now, having said that, if we get to a point where we have done all we think we could do at this particular point, we may have to revisit some of those things, that are included in your individual comments as well.
We did not,
Yeah.
we didn't have the opportunity to have those suggestions considered by the entire commission.
Right.
I assumed that they were being passed on to the consultants.
Yes.
Were they all passed on to the
They were,
consultants?
yes, they were. Oh, yeah.
Then I'd appreciate yours and county council's idea of just what is our role next week. I mean, we're not going to have a resolution adopting anything, correct? We're further discussing, and we can propose changes. What are we doing next week?
So even the Board of Supervisors, when it goes to them, are not doing anything other than an informational item, because the final plan is not going to come back until the CEQA document for it has come back. So the stage that we're at is I'm choosing which measures we want to recommend to get us to the target we committed to in our general plan. And what I think has been happening and causing confusion is it's not really clear, it seems, that the consultant understood its task to, they seem to not understand that we had already selected our target. After they last came to us, I don't think they realized that the general plan was the starting point, the target was the starting point, and so they hadn't collated the data or looked to see what measures recommended by the commission, how close those implementation of those measures would get us to the target. And so I'm I'm not directly, I don't have a direct line to the consultant, or frankly, most of the time not to COG. I understand there's monthly meetings. I haven't been to those, but they should, based on some interventions that Mr. Pedro, our interim CAO, and I attempted to take with COG and the consultants, we helped try to get on the same page, and I believe they understand at this point that we're looking for, one, whether the Planning Commission's recommendations for measures will get us to the target, and if not, based on the input that has been received from the commission thus far, can they help shape some measures that will get us there for us to select or discuss for. But I think what Gabriel's trying to say is, at the end of the day, we have to still do the math, hopefully with the consultant's assistance, and see whether we have a plan that we can defensively say will likely get us to our target.
Whether or not they knew the target was a 40% reduction, they could have done the math a long time ago based on the information. We spent days on this. We spent days discussing ways in which we could modify or tweak measures to make them usable here, but because they did not participate in any of that, what they have to guide them is a very stripped down summary of that discussion. And I understand that they're not going to want to watch hours and hours and hours of us talking. I'm pretty clear about that. But this whole thing seems like, how will this go? I don't know what recommendation we can give to the supervisors next week if we still don't know how. I think we're going to know how far off we are, but we're not going to know what's possible to do, because my understanding is they are not attending the meeting. So they will not have proposals for us on how much of we could move the needle by adopting additional measures.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I know if there's any more specific questions that a commissioner would like Mr. Gabriel or Mr. Pedro to pass on to the consultants, prior to our next meeting, that can be done. The commission's job is to make a recommendation to the board. And I mean, ideally, if things go well, there will be enough information in front of the commission that it can make some recommendations, at least about most or some measures. And if there's recommendations to, I understand that the board and the commission might have different needs when it comes to how soon this gets done. But I mean, the commission is free to make whatever report to the board of supervisors it wishes to make, and whatever recommendation it wishes to make.
I have a suggestion, and that is, at the time that we were invited to make suggestions that would be passed on to the consultants, but at that point, we couldn't share those with the other commissioners. At this point, isn't it possible in the package that we're going to get for next week that the planning department can share those with all the commissioners so we know what we're talking about next week?
Sure. I mean, I think if there's submissions if individual commissioners are ready to submit individual comments, and it's clearly stated in the packet that these are individual comments and not the commission's recommendations.
I'm talking about comments we made months ago. We were invited to make suggestions. I made, I think, 4 different memoranda of suggestions. But at that point, I couldn't share them with the other commissioners. At this point, isn't that something that we could share while the commissioners are looking at what we can do next week? They could look at the suggestions made by all of the various commissioners.
I think that if the only thing that can't happen is discussion or passing of comments around outside of a public meeting between more than 2 commissioners. So if Commissioner Lettish, if you want other commissioners to see your comments, they need to be published as part of the agenda for
That's
the
what I'm-
next
that's what I'm
meeting. And
asking.
I would just recommend, so that it's clear to the public and to the people who are reading the agenda, that if these are individual commissioner contributions to the staff report packet, that there just be a label or something
Yeah.
that identifies this as the suggestion, and it would be published at the same, at the same time that, you would send these comments individually to Gabriel to put in there.
We've
Yeah.
already submitted these comments.
Yeah, and okay.
So
So as
they
long,
have 'em.
right, so as long as you're not discussing them with each other and sending them to each other, yes, that is something that could be.
So if
Done.
that's part of the packet, then when we're talking about additional things, if they
Sure.
haven't included some of these things in, why we can, all the commissioners will have before them these suggestions, and we can discuss
Right.
them and pass upon them.
And I think one of the question then is, if there are some additional suggestions beyond the ones the consultants have for us, will they run the numbers before sending on the planning commission suggestions before we go to the board of supervisors? And I think that's, because it's right now, they're really trying to get it on for November 8th, so.
I understand that, and I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that
Okay.
all of the work that individual commissioners have done is before the commission and eventually before the board.
Right.
And whether the math is done by the board or by us, I mean, I'm totally incompetent of deciding whether the math is
Well, right. I
appropriate or
mean,
not.
if the eventual set of measures that are recommended by the board don't get us close enough to the target, we are going to probably have to come back and figure out what additional steps we need to take before finalizing the plan. Obviously, the goal is to try to do this more quickly than we have been.
We're kind of operating in the dark here, because we don't have any idea how far, if at all, we are going to miss the 40% reduction off of 1990 numbers. It all drives off the inventory numbers, which are 2018. So then you have to figure out what's the projected emissions in 2030. That drives off the 2018 inventory. Then you have to figure out what were the emissions in 1990. That also drives off the 2018 inventory, and we don't have any numbers as to 1990, and we have at least 4 different numbers for 2030. So as we sit here today, we are completely clueless as to how this is likely to go as a matter of numbers.
And one thing, speaking of the 2018 inventory, somehow it has to take into account there are no dairy farms and no feedlots in Calaveras County. I mean, we can't be expected to meet the 40% figure with inventory figures that are totally fictional.
All right.
I would
Madam
add, that's
Chair,
not the only problem with the inventory.
I fully agree. but-
Madam Chair, members of the commission, if I were to guess where we would fall when the numbers are run, I would venture to guess that we would be shy of the 40% target. Because I have seen other reports, not necessarily in this county, that have included more measures than we did, and they fell short of that 40% target. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there, that we would, I think what we need to be focusing on at this point is, what do we do to get to 40%? That should be the target. And I know that Commissioner Laddish, you sent some information. I have them. Chair Plotnick, you sent some information. I do have them. Commissioner Wooster, did you put anything down in writing and send to me regarding the GHG reduction measures at all?
No.
Okay, good. And I know Commissioner Parker did not, and I don't think that our newest Commissioner, Corey, did either. So the two of you, whatever information you did provide, some of which were quite extensive, I will have as an attachment to the report that comes from the, along with the report from the consultants that we hopefully will receive tomorrow.
Good, thank you.
So most of mine had to do with, because I only worked on the wildfire section, which
Right.
will have no
Impact.
impact on it. So
Right.
I did see a report, I think it was based in 2020 numbers, that showed that all of California's progress on greenhouse gas emissions had been wiped out by the wildfires that year.
Yes.
So it's very disturbing that our carbon sequestration opportunities in this county and wildfire reduction efforts can't contribute.
Now, another strategy that I've seen, and this might not be something that we could do at this particular time because we haven't really thought about it, was that some jurisdictions also adopt a policy of carbon sequestration by 2045. So even if you didn't meet, even if you did not meet the 2030 target of SB 32, there's a 2045 target for carbon sequestration, which improves our ability to comply, but we don't have that kind of instrument, in any of our documents, and I don't know how legally feasible it is at this point to kind of go in that direction. But this is not something that it's just something for you to have in the back of your mind, because there is an adjacent community that actually included carbon sequestration by 2045 in their total analysis. And it improves the picture a little bit. So whatever that means, it means we may have some more kind of intensive measures that we may have just cursorily rejected at the first go-around. And one thing that keeps coming up that I've seen a lot of is REACH codes, electrification requirements. That was something that we kind of shied away from because we felt, because from the testimony given by the building official, what some of the negative impacts of that would be. But if you think about the fact that we're going towards electricity, we're building more electric cars, we want to have more charging stations, electrification should be one of those goals, quote unquote, that we should consider adopting. And we might have to take some baby steps, to get there, because for a rural community like ours, we're not going to get there in a second. But if we have policies in place, I think those policies we have in place might score some points. Because at the end of the day, CEQA would be the greatest beneficiary of our being able to, of our meeting our 2030 target or 2045 carbon sequestration target, because it makes CEQA analysis a lot easier, for future projects in our community. So it's a kind of interwoven series of benefits, but at the same time, it's quite challenging getting there.
So we didn't remove all the electrification stuff in our discussions. What we talked about was choosing carefully the pieces of it for ones that we could get financial support for, that there might be grants available, that the county could provide support for, like providing additional charging stations on county-owned land or providing incentives. We did keep quite a lot of it in there. What we rejected was having reach codes that required full electrification of new construction. Because the building code is already pushing in that direction. And so what we would have to do, I think, would be more than is practical, given in the last 2 weeks, my power's been out twice at my house.
Well, I went out in Copper yesterday.
Yeah.
With
It was out
7,000
from
people.
Arnold to Copper yesterday.
Yeah, yeah,
So-
I know.
So for a lot of people, going 100% electric is going to be
Oh, no.
impractical.
Yeah.
So what is there between what the building code is already pushing for? What we could do is look for incentives to provide to existing homeowners that would help them incrementally move over
Right.
if there's money available for that. And I
Absolutely.
think there was support for that, so that people
That's
who
common sense.
want to
Yeah.
do that,
Absolutely.
we want that
Common
money back in our
Absolutely.
county.
Oh, no.
So this is my concern, is that our discussions had lots of subtleties about how we might implement things, not just this is in or this is out. And because we have seen nothing and are completely in the dark here, we have no idea what is coming back to us
Right.
from the consultants.
Right.
Also, I still haven't seen an example of a plan in another rural community that has been adopted that has met some, so that we could see what other sorts of measures other rural areas thought were actually useful, actually did improve their greenhouse
Absolutely.
gas emissions,
Absolutely.
reduce them. But we're achievable in a rural setting.
Yeah. You know, I think the target is renewable energy. That for rural communities, it's one of the biggest challenges, you know, but it is one area where we have a lot of latitude. And REACH codes do not only specifically address building code. I have seen communities that have taken steps to exceed Title 24 requirements with REACH codes. But REACH codes also go into electrification when it comes to transportation infrastructure. One of the things that we did talk about was how do we transition from our current vehicular fleet into maybe hybrids, going electric, and there's a series of areas that I think we can make some improvement.
And we discussed that and supported
Yeah.
that,
Oh,
and
yeah.
even had COG speak to us about their
Right.
efforts to electrify and where
Absolutely.
they could and couldn't do it.
Right.
So we should already have measures in there that,
I think we would get some points for that. I think we would get some points for that. It just seems to me that if this 40% target is not achievable, why was that target set so, well, for lack of a better word, high? Why wasn't it 30% or 25% or whatever? I don't know. I'm not saying it's not achievable. I'm just saying that even for communities that have taken steps that are a little bit more drastic than ours towards compliance with SB 32, they're still falling short of that 40% target.
Well, I can tell you why. It was because we were told the state required us to do that. That information was wrong. That got us on the wrong track right off the bat.
it was in order to be able to tier off of it, I believe. That was,
I think we heard both.
Yeah.
But it is not required by the
Right.
statute.
It is
It is
optional.
required for California,
Right.
which we're a part of.
Well,
We learned
the-
of that little fact
Yeah,
at one of the first meetings we had on this with the consultants, because their inventory said state law requires requires and encourages local jurisdictions to adopt these measures.
right,
After some discussion,
yes,
it turned out there were no such requirements.
right.
Okay, Now, on the carbon sequestration point, we brought that up right after we got the wildfire assessment, and we said, some of us at least, that fits this county better because we have a lot of forests and a lot of rangeland and so forth. For all we know, we're carbon neutral already. Can you tell us whether we are and where we're at? And the answer was, no, it's not within the scope of the work. Plus, it turns out AB 32 and SB 32 are both gross emissions, and carbon sequestration is irrelevant. So that's where we're at. We have a general plan that incorporates what turns out to be non-existent requirements on the county that doesn't fit the county.
Yeah,
That's where we're at.
and
Could
Commissioner,
modify the general plan 4 times a year.
Right.
We can
We
do a
could,
general
right.
plan
Right.
amendment.
we do an amendment.
We should do.
And
Well,
I
once we know
wouldn't be
what-
surprised, if there is a sizable number of communities and counties in the state that find that 40% target to be a little bit hard to reach, whether or not that number, that target might be reduced. It's just a guess. I don't know which direction this is going to go, because there really isn't any point in having a standard that is found to be not achievable, even at the best. So even if we adopted, what I would like to know, hypothetically speaking, is if we adopted every single item on the measures that were proposed to us, and if Planning Commission on day one said, boom, let's go, are we at 40% or not? And if we're not at 40% at that time, we're not going to be at 40% come tomorrow or a week after.
I'd like to know the source of these measures, if they are a list that our consultants have developed and are using, or if this is sort of an industry standard sort of a list. Where did it come from?
You didn't use the term cookie cutter, thank you. Admirable.
I think it's a combination of both. There are certain tried and tested measures that have become universally accepted that go towards reduction of greenhouse gases. What I think, because in this particular instance, the consultants is not only working with Calaveras County, but also are the same clients with the City of Angels Camp. And the two communities are not very similar. I mean, we're similar in certain areas, and we're very, very different in certain other instances. So I don't know whether or not we are giving the same measures.
They are exactly the same
Same
measures,
measures.
because I actually followed Angels Camp's
Right.
process, and I actually reviewed the measures item by item to
Exactly
see
same.
what they did.
Right.
So that's what, and I don't know if they're working with other communities somewhere.
Somewhere else.
But there are other consultants out there, and it would be very interesting to know if some other rural county has a different list of measures that we could use just to be inspired. Or is there a different approach maybe
Yeah.
that we have missed? And
Now, yours is a very good point. Now,
I did look at Tuolumne's, and theirs are similar.
Similar.
And they defaulted to an almost entirely encourage
Yes,
and inspire approach.
right.
So I don't know what their number, I don't know
What
what
their
their final
numbers are.
numbers came up to.
Right,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
We're just working in the dark, I have to. Yeah, I feel like our commission has been so diligent about putting the time and effort into this. And it feels like we're not being met in the middle with the information we require.
Okay.
Well, I guess we see what we get hopefully
Yeah.
tomorrow.
And maybe we're gonna be blown away on Friday with how comprehensive
Maybe
of
we
a
would.
report it
We're
is.
going to be blown away, I'm sure.
It would be interesting. I can't wait. I can't wait to see. Personally, I can't.
I'm
I
sorry.
can't wait.
Are you going to email it to us?
Well, email, deliver it, whatever it is it takes to get to you, I'm willing to do. So you just let me know what works best. Now, depending on the size and the volume, I think we can get by with email to a certain extent. We would also post it, I suppose, as part of the staff report package. But for hard copies, Commissioner Wooster, I had told you yesterday that I would deliver yours. Commissioner Ladish, if it happens that you're still not in town or whatever works best for you, I will make sure that we get you a hard copy of that report. And
Can they drop it in the mail?
usually, from what I've heard, when we drop it in the mail, depending on where it's going within the county, it doesn't get there within 5 days.
I got my package for this meeting in the mail. The mail arrived yesterday.
Yesterday.
Mine too.
Right.
So
It's not the most
terribly
efficient, not the most efficient way to do business.
I assume it has to be posted because the public needs access to this.
Right.
So, and sooner would be better, whether or not, even if that means that there's not a lot of analysis accompanying it.
Right.
I'm happy to just download it when it's posted, or if it's emailed to me, that's fine too. I would just like to have it as soon as possible.
Right. I would get it over to you as soon as we get our hands on them. If we're getting it at 5 p.m. on Friday or close to 5 p.m. on Friday, what I can do is get you the specific information that we get from them and then follow up, later on in the week with, some analysis of that in a report. But the raw data, I think, needs to be in your hands for you to kind of scrutinize them and underline them and, make recommendations and so on and so
And
forth.
I think with that first shot, if the individual commissioners' suggestions could be included in that first shot.
Right.
So the commissioners don't have to look at it without that and then look at it again with
Right.
those suggestions.
Right. Oh, no, I will do that. I will go through my emails and get all the attachments sent by you and any other commissioner on that subject.
Just for, I think I had 4.
Yes. Right.
So are we,
So much for your record.
yeah, so much for my record, that's okay. Not the most important thing today. So I think we need a motion to continue this to a date certain, which will be November 3rd
November 3rd.
at 9 a.m.
9
here in
a.m.
the board chambers.
I so move without restating it.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None, so passes 401 with Commissioner Fisk absent today. There's no informational items? Are there any commissioner reports?
Commissioner reports.
I think we feel like we've all talked enough. Planning director's report.
I just want to mention that the next regularly scheduled planning commission meeting would have maybe 1 or 2 items on there regarding
Williamson Act.
yes, Williamson Act. This is the time of the year for that, so we have another one to go. So
That'll be next Thursday?
yeah.
No, that'll be
No,
the following
the
Thursday.
regularly scheduled.
Our
gone.
regularly scheduled one.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, you're going for that. Will be Williamson Act. Yes.
They tend to
And-
not be too controversial.
They don't need me.
Always we need.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are adjourned at 9:45. And I'll see you guys all back here next week.
Week from now.
Okay.